Hi guys. So if you're in the UK, you're no doubt aware that the annual tax deadline of the 31st of January is fast approaching. This gave me the idea of producing a quick tutorial video on how to use Excel to produce a P&L for a small sole trader that you can then use to compile your profit and loss figures and submit your self-assessment tax return if you wanted to do it without employing an accountant to do it. Obviously, the first thing you're going to need is Excel. So you can simply Google Excel, find Microsoft, go to their website. Let's get rid of all these. Let's just accept all these cookies, get them out of the way. And if you scroll down the bottom, you can see the various costs for each one. If you just want the free version to use online only or web-based, you can sign up there. If you want more functionality with all the various other things that go with it in the 365 suite, you can sign up here for this. It's only $5.99 a month. It also comes with 1 terabyte cloud storage, and you get a desktop based and on a web based. So it isn't very expensive. It can be free or it can be $5.99 a month. I believe there's also the option to purchase it for $59.99 annually. Obviously, if you're a small business and you're a lower rate taxpayer, roughly 30% of the cost is going to be saved from your tax bill anyway. So the taxman is effectively paying a third of that price. So I just thought I'd quickly show you where you can get Excel if you don't have it, and it's not very expensive. So there you go. So once you've downloaded it and installed it, all you need to do to open it is go in here, type Excel, look for the Excel app if you've got it on your desktop, and open it. And if you don't have it, it will open in the web browser. And then when you open it, you end up with a sheet like this. You can just double click on blank workbook, and there you have Excel open and ready to go. So I'll just close that down, and then I'll have a look at these that I've got open already. Now, what I'm going to produce today is for use if you're going to produce your self-assessment under the cash basis with simplified expenses. So I'll quickly explain what the cash basis is. It's designed to simplify tax accounting for small sole traders and partnerships that are individuals, not corporate partnerships. It can't be used by limited companies, and it can't be used by limited liability partnerships. The turnover of the business, and this is a combined, if you've got more than one sole trade business, a combined turnover of 150,000, or if you're in receipt of universal credit, 300,000. You account for the income and expense when you receive the money or you pay the money out. So it's very simple for you to keep track of when your money's gone in, when your money's come out. You don't have to understand more complicated tax rules of things like accruals. You don't have to worry about debtors and creditors, etc. It allows you to claim the full expense on all capital expenditure except on cars, land and buildings. Capital expenditure is mainly tangible assets that you might use in a business. Could be a cooker, could be a van, could be some machinery. Under accruals basis, those things you have to start thinking about calculating capital allowances. Under the cash basis, you're just allowed to claim all that expense as you incur it without having to worry about capital allowances. You're not allowed to claim capital expenditure on the purchase or disposal of business assets. There's no deduction for bad or doubtful debts, but this is irrelevant because you haven't had the money, so you wouldn't be accounting for it anyway. No deduction is allowed for entertaining, but it's never allowed anyway, so that's irrelevant. And if you've got loans and credit interest, you're only allowed to claim £500 per annum. But this is only on money loans. If you've got interest on allowable expenses, such as asset HP, except cars. So if, for example, you'd bought a piece of equipment for your business on hire purchase, the interest for that is allowable in full. It's only money loans. So if you took out a loan of £5,000 from a bank and then you used that cash or that loan to buy your asset, that's where you'd only be limited to £500 per annum. But if you bought an asset with finance, not getting a loan separately, you would be allowed to claim the full interest. Certain trades can't use the cash basis. I'm not going to go into those. That'll be up to you to figure out or find out which of the trades can and can't be, but they're obscure trades like mineral extraction and things like that. I think maybe funeral homes as well. As I say, it's not going to be, most trades can use it, but it's worth checking that you are a allowable trade before you do so. And the only other thing that you can't do is you can't offset losses against other income. You can only carry those losses forward. So if you've got big losses, it might be that you don't want to use cash accounting. If you've got other income, that you can set it off, and therefore you just don't for that year elect for cash accounting. You use accrual accounting, create your accounts based on accrual basis, and then you offset those losses against your other income as you're allowed under. But if you haven't, then obviously it's not a concern. So that's what the cash basis is. And the reason I'm using that today is mainly because of capital allowances can get very complicated, and obviously that really would be a tutorial in and of itself. So we will build something on the cash basis, which is the simplest for small sole traders to do. The other thing we will choose to use is simplified expenses on cars, because cars are the only expense that are not allowed to be claimed in full, that have to be claimed as capital allowances, unless you elect to use the simplified expense. So under simplified expenses, instead of claiming the actual running costs and capital allowances, you keep a mileage log, and you claim business. Your claim is based on the mileage. The first £10,000 you're able to claim at 45 pence, and anything over that £10,000 you're able to claim at 25 pence a mile. And the last one, Homer's Office. Again, if you're working from home, if you're not using simplified expense, you basically have to apportion out the percentage of the house that you're using for an office, what all your costs are, how many hours in a day as a proportion of the day, etc., etc. It can get complicated. So instead, HMRC came up with this simple allowance. So 25 to 50 hours a month, you can get £10. 51 to 100 hours a month, £18, and 101 hours or more, £26 a month. So those are the simplified expenses that we will use. That doesn't include, by the way, anything you spend on phones and stuff like that. You can apportion those out. This is just the expenses of the home, such as rent or mortgage, interest, electric, heating, etc. You might seem like these seem to be low, but depending on obviously how big your house is, how many people live there, how many hours a day you work in it, if you're effectively working in a five room house, you work in one room, straight away all your expenses are only 1/5. Then if you're only working for 8 hours a day out of the full 24 hours, so that's 1/5 times by a third, and then you might only be working 5 days a week, so that's 5/7. So you can see how actually, even though you think it might not be a massive allowance, when you start using the time apportionment, the hours worked apportionment, and the footprint apportionment of the house, then you can see how it actually might not turn out to be as low as you think. So that's what we will do. Now let's just show you what we hope to end up with. So we will build a P&L. We'll have a sheet for losses, and we'll have another sheet for the mileage the mileage log. So that's what we will produce today. And this, I've set it out basically how it shows on the actual tax return itself. Obviously these capital expenses, I only put them in for completeness, but we won't actually need to worry about those because we've chosen to use cars under the simplified expense method. So that's what we will produce today. On that basis, we will leave this up as a template for us to look at, and then we will just start building this, and I will teach you how to build it as if you've never used Excel before and have no understanding at all of how it works. So let me just open a blank sheet. Here we go. Here's our blank sheet. The first thing you probably want to do is click on File, Save As, and save your document wherever you usually save it, then we can save it as we go along without risk of losing much data. So we will call this, let's say, cash basis P and L for self-assessment. Save. You'll know that it's saved if the name at the top has changed to the name that you've just put in. Then all you do is select cell A1 with your mouse and right click on it, and we're going to type in Joe Jane blogs, and then we're going to hit enter. Then when we go enter, it will go down to the cell below it, and we're just going to start typing profit and loss and income and expense. Yep, close brackets. Then we're going to hit enter again. Then we're just going to type in tax year. And this one, we're going to assume it's tax year 22-23. Hit enter. And then we're just going to type in for year end 31/03/2023. Now, I've specifically chosen year end 31/03/2023. This is effectively the basis period, and it's my advice that if you're a sole trader, you use year end 31/03 of whatever year it is that you're doing. Tax years in the UK start on the 6th of April of a year and run to the end of the 5th of April the following year. It's just a bit of a messy date. It's not very clean. The reasons for that go all the way back to when the UK was on the Julian calendar and moved to the Gregorian calendar sometime in the 1800s. And the date has remained pretty much stuck there ever since. So I like to choose the 31st of March as the end point of a tax year, because it's a clean end date, and HMRC will treat that. You don't have to worry about overlap profits and things like that. If you start choosing other dates, you can end up in the situation where you've got overlap profits. So again, if you're brand new to starting, whatever date you started on, I would suggest going from that date and choosing to end your accounts on the 31st of March following that date and producing your accounts to that period, just because it's cleaner than having to faff about with a few extra days in April and starting the year on the 6th of April. But that's a personal choice, but that would be what I would do. Right, now we're going to go down and we're just going to, with our mouse button, we're going to move the cursor onto there, and we're going to click on A7. And we're going to write in here, income, and then brackets, sales, close brackets, and enter. Now we're going to go over to cell D, just above income and sales, and we're going to put the pound sign. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hit tab, because tab also will move the cursor and enter the data, but it'll move it across. So pressing tab always moves the selected square is always in green. So we've tabbed across twice, and we're just going to type in another pound sign and hit enter. Then what I did there, sorry, was I just used the arrow keys. So on your keyboard, you've got the arrow keys. If you hit them, you will see that the green selection box just moves around one cell at a time. So we're going to hit it down to A10, and we're going to type expenses in there. What I'm just going to show you now is that the order I've put these categories on here is effectively as it's shown on the actual tax return itself. So I think here you go. So here is a self-assessment tax return, and you can see that you start off with turnover. This is the business self-assessment page for sort of like sole traders, and then you can see cost of goods, car, van, travel, wages, rent, repairs, accountancy, legal, interest, phone, other allowable, and then your total expenses there, and then it'll give you a net profit. So that's how it's laid out on the tax return, and that's pretty much how we've got it laid out here. Cost of goods, car, van, wages, rent, rate, power, insurance, property, repairs, maintenance, professional legal fees, interest, finance charges, phone, stationery, other allowable business expenses. All we need to do is go on to A11 and type these in. So cost of goods, car, van, travel expenses, wages and staff costs. Each time, by the way, I'm just hitting enter, and it will make it go down one square. Enter always makes it enters what you've typed, and it always puts the cursor into the box below, so you can just carry on typing. Rent, power, insurance. I can't actually, let me just double check that one. Rent, power, insurance costs. Yeah, okay. So it's that one that's got it wrong. Let's just get rid of that one here. Don't know why I've got insurance twice. Rent, power, insurance, property, repairs and maintenance, professional, and legal fees. Why do I keep doing that? I always like to have my capitalized. You don't have to, it's just me being OCD. Interest and finance, charges, phone, stationery, and office, and then other allowable business expenses. There you go. Now, just to make this look prettier, if you go up here and find where it turns into that little black line with the arrows, if you double click, it will extend the width of cell A so that it encompasses everything that's been typed in cell A. There you go, just like that. You just have to double click on it. Now you can see cell A is extended out. It just for ease of reading, so you can see what's in that cell without it overlapping into the adjacent cells. So we're on 20. What we'll do now is we'll move down to line 22 and we'll type in net profit and we'll put loss in brackets. And then what we'll do is we will go back up here to other allowable expenses. Yeah. Just use you can use the arrow keys to go across to here. And what I want to do is, this is where we want to sum our expenses. So to make it easier to read, I first of all want to put a black border at the bottom of there. See what that like that is there, you see? So all you have to do is, once you're on that and you're on the home page, if you look for this little box here, and you can drop down and pick all these different options. So we just want bottom border. What that does is that's going to put it on the bottom of the cell that we've got selected. If you picked a different one like top border, it would put it at the top. So we would do that if we wanted to do that, we'd have that in that cell and then put top border, and it would still put the black line there. But I want it up bottom, is just the way I've got it set up. All you have to do is, once you've selected that, is just hit that there and it will put a little, when you now use your arrow key to move away from it, you'll see that there's a black line underlining. It's basically a border of this. If you increase the size of the cell, it would stretch with it, because it's actually put a border on that grid line there. So now we want to just select on here, because this is where we want to put our sum of the expenses in. And all we want to do here is we want to hit the equal sign, because we're entering a formula. So hit equals, yeah, and write sum. Right, now you can see all the different functions that are coming up. Then you hit open bracket, and then it gives you the arguments for the function. So it's saying number 1, number 2, it's saying what numbers do you want me to add up. Well, what we're going to do is we're just going to click on this cell here. Yeah. So that we can now see the blue and the dotted arrow. And then we're going to do this until we get that little arrow. So move your cursor into the corner until you get the little arrow. And then we're going to drag it. We're going to press the left mouse button once and hold it down. And now you can drag this blue box to the area of all the cells that are going to have numbers in that you want to sum together. So you'll see now that it says what you can just release it once you've got that blue box around where you want it to go. Just release the left mouse button, and now you can see it says D11, which is this top cell here, down to D19, and it's got the colon there, right? So that's what you call a range. Instead of having to do one number and a comma, a next number and a comma, we just do the full range, and that's how you denote a range. It has the colon in the middle. So at the end there, you just need to close brackets. So you just type the close bracket and then press enter. Now you'll see that what we've got in there, if you click on it now, if you look up here, this is basically the content of that cell. You'll see the actual formula that's in there. It's showing the result of the formula, but the actual formula that we've typed in there is shown here. Just see. So we can just see that it's working by selecting on some of these cells and typing in so we know that it's working. Let's just delete those, and again, what you can do to select a range is another way to do it is if you're in the cell that you want as the first cell, hold down the shift button on your computer, and then you can use the arrow keys. Yeah. Now release the shift button, and I've highlighted that range of cells. All I need to do now is hit delete, and I've cleared those entries. So that's how you enter a function and sum things up and select a range. Now, the other thing here is this is net profit, and net profit, as you know, is the income minus the expenses. So if we just use our mouse keys to tab across to here into cell F22, we're going to do another sum in here, and all we need to do is hit equals. Now this time we don't have to type sum, because we're just going to be taking one cell off the other. So we can do equals, that means start a function. Yeah. And our income is going to be in this cell here. So all you have to do is click on it, and now you can see it's selected that cell. So it's saying equals this cell. Now we want to take off the expenses, so we just put the minus sign, and then we click on D20 because this is where we've got the sum of our expenses. And you can see now it says equals F8 minus D20. So whatever figure we have in F8, it's going to take off the amount that's in D20 and it's going to give us the value of that. So that's all we have to do. And once we've entered F8 minus D20, we just hit enter. And you can see again, if we highlight it, that's the function stroke sum that we've got in there, the formula, and we can test that it works. Let's just have a test quickly. Let's say we've got income of 10,000. Oops, I put it in the wrong cell. Income of 10,000. You'll see it's now taken 10,000 minus 0 is 10,000, but let's just pretend we've got some expensive staff. So now you can see we've got 10,000 income, we've got 5,000 in staff costs. We can see that that's working because it's shown as our total expenditure is 5,000 in that. And then this formula here to arrive at the net profit is taking, as you can see in there, it's taking the content of F8. Sorry, content of F8. So this is because I've got this on the wrong line. Minus the sum of D20, and it's given us the answer. Now obviously I've got my formula incorrect. Yeah, because I've got it on the wrong line. I wanted it really on F7. So all I need to do here is click on this. So I've got it highlighted. Press your F2 button and it will enter that cell again. Now once we're in it, we just want to change. We can do it several ways. We could just type it. We could just type in there and change that F8 to F7. Yeah. Or we could move up here till we get that symbol. Yeah. This sort of like little four-way cross. And again, we can left click on it with our mouse, our left mouse button, left click and hold, and then we can just drag it into this where we want the actual box to be, and then unclick the mouse button, release the mouse button. So you can see that F8 has now turned into F7 because we moved the blue box. Yep. So now if we hit enter, it will change the formula. Our formula is now minus 5,000 because it's reading cell F7, which has got nothing in it. So all we need to do is delete that and put our income in the correct box. And there you have it. That's basically how to enter a formula. Okay, so now let's move on to the next bit. Now, this bit, as I've already mentioned, chaps, is not really relevant to what we're doing. I'll include it for completeness, but we will not be using it for doing our self-assessment. So let's just quickly duplicate it. Now you guys can just type that out just to get it so that it's in the same format as what I've got. I'm just gonna, what's it doing? I just want to speed things up because this is just so we can move on. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. All you guys need to do is copy it. Then once you've copied those out, go to this cell, do the bottom border as we did before, click on it so you get the black border. Then in here, right, in this cell, just type equals, type sum, an open bracket, click on here, press the shift and hold shift down, and then using the arrow keys, just move them up till you cover cells D72 to D32. Then close bracket and enter. And then we want to go line 35, adjusted profits, tab across to column F, and then let's just make sure what we want this to be. Yeah. Okay. So type equals. We're going to take the capital allowances off the net profit. So put equals, click on F22, type minus, and click on F33. Hit enter. Obviously, we're not going to have any expenses there, so that's just going to end up giving us the same figure that we had above. Now, again, this is taken from the layout from an actual self-assessment tax return, just so you can see. So there was the expenses that we had at the top, which gave us the net profit. And here you can see the capital allowances, annual investment, allowance for small balance, 0, etc., etc. And those are what we've got on there. And then you have an adjusted profit. And then after that, if we go back to our, then we have some minor adjustments. So we'll now put these in. Adjustments for personal use. So go to cell 37. Adjustments for personal use. And goods, services for personal use. And SEISS grant for year 5 April 2023. Next year that won't exist, as that was only for COVID. As you can see again, goods for services for own use, self-employment support scheme, net business profit, so that's those ones. Then we've got losses, which we'll do next. That's net business profits for tax purposes, so we'll put that in. And we want to go onto F41. And we want to type equals and adjusted profits. And we want to type minus because we're going to take off goods and services for personal use. And if you had any SEIS grant, you're going to add those. So once you've got that, you hit add and then you click on that square there and then you press enter. So for argument's sake, let's say you took £1,000 of goods for personal use. You would see that actually, sorry, that's incorrect. You'd be adding that, because what we're effectively trying to do is, if you've taken goods for personal use, then that means that some of the expenses that you put in here for those goods is not actually an expense, so you're adding them back. And then obviously if you received any money from the government for SEIS, you would also be adding that into your total business profits for tax purposes. So there you go, just so you can see it again. You want equals F35 plus F38 plus F39. Tap down so you're on to line 43, and we're going to put in there losses brought forward to offset this year, and enter down to line 45. Any other business income not included. So just double check that that's what we want. So losses brought forward from earlier years to set off against this, and any other business income. Okay, and then we just want our total of all those. So we go down to cell 47, A47, and total taxable profits, and then in brackets you can put losses. Bracket stands for negative, and then just tab over till we get there under F47. Now what we're going to do here is add a different set of borders, whereas before we were adding just the small underline. Here we go onto the little border thing, click the down arrow, and you can pick top and double bottom border. Click that. That will give us our final some borders that you see on everything up. And then obviously total taxable profit loss is going to be whatever profits we've got on the net profit for tax purposes. Then we're going to take off any losses we've brought forward, and we're going to add in any other business income we've not included already anywhere else that relates to the business. So we want, this is our starting point, so put equals and then click on there, then hit minus to take off any losses we're setting off that we brought forward from previous years, from loss balances. And then obviously we're going to press add, because if we've got any other business income, we need to add it to the income. Once you've got those in like that, hit enter, and that will give you the total taxable profit losses for that tax year. Right, so that's this. What we'll just do now is we will just get it looking nice and pretty so we can see the various elements stand out that we want. And so we'll start at the top here, click on A, hold your left mouse button, drag it down to there. In fact, you can drag it down to there actually if you want. And once you've got that highlighted, release your mouse button, and then just see that there, that bolds. So you can just press bold and it bolds the font to black. Yeah. And the same with this and this. Now all I did there was I clicked on the cell D6, and if you hold Ctrl, you can now actually select, instead of selecting ranges, if you held shift and then clicked on there, it would highlight the whole range. If you actually hold the control button and click, you can highlight individual cells, and it'll, while you've got your thing, it's highlighting them all. It doesn't lose the ones you've previously highlighted. To unhighlight them, just click off it and click away. So highlight that one, press Ctrl, highlight that one, take your fingers off, they're both highlighted, hit bold, and now they're both bold as well. We want net profit and loss and the total there to be bold. Capital allowances, obviously mine's bold because I'd copied it across. You can just highlight it and hit bold. Again, we want the adjusted profit. Click on adjusted profit, hold Control, click on the sum, press bold. We want adjustments to be bold. Oh, we missed expenses as well. We want that to be bold. Then we want net business to be bold. And we finally want our final total to be bold. And there you have it. The last thing to do there is to right click on where it says sheet 1, and you can hit rename, and we're going to just backspace that and call it profit and loss, and then hit enter. And there you have your profit and loss sheet almost set up. So we will just hit our save button so we don't lose any of our progress, and that is now saved, so I haven't lost any progress. Actually, guys, before we do move on, I think I've made an error just there. I think I've put it in the wrong cells. Let me just double check. Yeah, D27 to D32. It should be D26 to D32. We've missed out the AIA. So just move your cursor up to the top till you get the two little arrows. Hold down your left mouse button and then you can just drag it up. So we get D26 to D32. Release it, press enter, and there you go. I know this isn't really necessary for what we're doing on the cash basis, but you may at some point decide to move across to the accrual basis, and you know, you might use this as a template to do that, so you might as well have a template that's got the right ranges in it. You guys might have otherwise come across that error while you were building it. And let's just make sure it's working. So because these are allowances that reduce things, as you can see, they are reducing the profit. Balancing charges are the opposite of the allowances though. So if you were going to use it in this format, you would put these in as a minus. So because they increase profit. Yes, it works. So from a profit basis, you could technically sort of treat them as if they were in this column, which is your income column, not this column. They're like negative expenses. But that's good. That's correct. Right there, guys, now that we've completed this P&L, let's have a look at our losses sheet, which is what we're going to build next. So let's just bring it up. It's going to be a very simple sheet. We're going to just build this. Most of these, to be fair, or not most of them, but losses carried back and losses set off against other income. Well, losses set off against other income can't be done under the cash basis, and losses carried back are only allowed under the cash basis in the terminal year. So we'll put them in, but they won't really be relevant for cash basis, because cash basis, unless it's terminal year, you can only carry them forward to use against future profits of the same trade. But we'll build this anyway. There is discussion at the moment. There is a government paper out looking at maybe changing the use of losses, but at the moment you can effectively only carry them forward to future profits. Okay, so if we go back to our sheet that we've just done, come down to the bottom here, find the little thing that says new sheet on it and click it, and it will bring up a sheet 2. Now with it highlighted, you can tell which one's highlighted because it's got the little line underneath it, and it's white on mine. It'll probably be different on yours because I've got my background set to night background. Yours is probably default to the white background, but I prefer the dark background. So with it highlighted, right click it, hit rename, and we'll just call it losses and hit enter. Okay, so go up to the top, cell A1. In fact, I'll show you how to do this. Go into your profit and loss front sheet. You can highlight all that and you can hit Ctrl C. And what's that done now is that's copied everything in there. We can then click on our losses page, hit on A1 and put Ctrl V. And now we've pasted it. Where it says profit and loss, we're just going to click on A2 and we're going to just overtype this with losses. And we still want tax year is the same and the year ending is the same. So come down to cell 6. Well, in fact, first of all, let's double click on that so it expands out. Then on 6B, we're going to put our little pound symbol in, or if you're watching in a different country, currency of your choice. And we're going to enter down twice, and we're going to go over to cell 8, and we're going to put losses brought forward. So this is basically, we're going to hit enter. Again, let's go up there till we get the little black sign, the little arrows, double click it just so it keeps it so it's easier to read. Yep. And if this is your first year trading, what have you, you haven't got any losses brought forward, so we'll put a 0 there and enter. Next thing, go down to cell 10 and type less losses, hit enter, and underneath put offset against current profits, hit enter. Again, we can just, now you can actually just, instead of double clicking it, you can hold your left mouse button down like that, and you can just drag it to a size that you want. So let's do that, give us a bit of extra space, so don't have to keep doing it. Then on 14, let's put losses for the current year, less losses carried back, and set off against other income, which, like I say, and then unused, and I'll just make that so you understand what that is. I'll put that in brackets so you know what I'm referring to when I say unused. Right, so we've put a 0 in there. We'll put all these in as zeros for now. And carried forward losses. Now then, unused, that needs to be a sum, because basically we're saying this is the losses we made in the current year, these are the losses we're carrying back, and these are the losses we're setting off against other income. So in here, just highlight it and hit equals, and then obviously it's losses for the current year minus any losses that we're going to carry back and minus any losses we set off against other income, and hit enter. And then just highlight that, hold your mouse button down, your left mouse button, drag it so you highlight both of those, and let's put them in bold. And then our losses carried forward, obviously that also needs to be a sum. So for losses carried forward, it's going to be our starting losses brought forward. Then we're going to minus any losses we've offset against current profits. And we can add any unused losses for the current year. And those are the losses we can carry forward to future years. And again, highlight that, A19, and then hold your left mouse button and drag it across so it's highlighted, then go up here and press bold. Right. And that's our simple losses sheet. If we'd had losses from previous years brought forward, for example, let's say we had 10,000 in losses brought forward, and in our profit and loss, we've got 5,000 in profits. We would be able to offset 5,000 of those against those profits, meaning that we're only going to carry forward 5,000 losses to be used in future years. And you will see that there are boxes on the self-assessment tax return for losses. So let's just, you can see those there. Losses from this tax year set off against other income. Doesn't apply if you're on the cash basis. Losses to be carried back. Doesn't apply to and then total losses for, now there's a box up here, there you go, losses brought forward from earlier years. So that would be where we put our 5,000 losses if we were add those 10,000 losses brought forward and we had that 5,000 profit and we wanted to set those losses, you'd put them in this box. So that's why we build the losses sheet, so that you can keep track of what losses you've got and how you've used them. Okay, so that's losses. Now the last thing we need to add is our mileage sheet. So let's go there and add a new tab again, or new sheet. Click on it. Now hit right click, rename, and we'll call it mileage. And let's have a look at our mileage sheet. There we go. So again, we can just go back to our losses sheet. We can highlight that by clicking on cell A, holding the left mouse button down, dragging it down till it's all highlighted, and then you can hit Ctrl and C to copy. Then we can go across to mileage, and we can click on cell A1 and Ctrl V to paste. And we can then just double click on that so that it expands to fill the sheet. Now you'll notice that this sheet is a little bit, the grids and the things, the text looks smaller than the sheets. It's not actually smaller. What I've changed on this one is the view scale. So if you look up here where it says view, click on view, you will see under zoom, if you click on zoom, you'll see that I've got it set to custom at 85%. Whereas if we look at this sheet, go on view, go on zoom, it's set to 100%. So on our mileage sheet, let's just go to view. At the top there, you've got these, click on view, click on zoom, go down to custom, and I'm going to type in there 85%. And that'll now zoom out a little bit so that we can see more of this sheet. And that's just because I wanted to add quite a few more. You can add more. It can go off the bottom of the screen. It's just that I wanted to keep it all on one screen just for the tutorial purposes. Okay, so having got that, view 85%, go on to cell 7 and put in date, and then tab across, then type in journey start, tab, journey end, tab. Right, let's just go on here. We want it same again, just double click so that it expands to the size of the text that's been entered. Miles and miles year to date. Okay, so those are the headings that we want. Now then, go on to cell B8. Okay, and then whilst we're still on the view tab, see this that says freeze panes? Open it, and this top one here where it says keep rows and columns visible whilst rest of the worksheet scrolls, wherever that corner is, it fixes a point there and it will draw two lines, one on the vertical, one on the horizontal, and it sets that as a freeze frame like that. So now if we scroll down off the bottom of the page, we can still see those headers. And likewise, if we scroll that way, we can still see our date. You can see that they don't, but that's fine. It's mainly just to set those where we want them. Okay, now miles year to date. The reason we want this is because the way mileage allowance works is that the first 10,000 miles in a tax year is at 45 pence, and then anything over and above 10,000 is at 25 pence. So we need to keep a running total of our mileage. So highlight E8, press equals, because on the first date, the first mileage we do is just going to equals whatever miles we've claimed on that journey. That is the first journey, business journey of the tax year. So it equals whatever we claim there. Then the cell underneath, E9, again hit equals to start a formula. And this time it's going to be hit the up arrow so that it brings up the first cell being E8, and then hit the plus and then hit this cell D9 and hit enter. So what's that formula saying now is add the mile year to date as calculated previously, and then on top of that add the latest mileage journey and keep a running total. Now all you need to do here now is we can grab this formula and make it fill all the squares that we want to make it fill. And here I've taken it down to cell 63. You can go as far as you like. Wait till that comes up, the little plus, click the left mouse button and you can just drag that formula, that contents down, and I'm dragging it down to cell 63. Obviously, if you do a lot more than 63 business journeys in a year, you're going to want to drag it down a lot further, because for mileage, you have to have a log of all your business journeys so that the taxman can check, if he wants to, that you have only claimed genuine mileage for business journeys. And that's where you'd put the date, where the journey started, where the journey ended, and the miles, so that if he wants to audit it, he can go, right, okay, you've travelled from Manchester to London, you've claimed 5,000 miles, and he can go, no, it's not 5,000 miles from Manchester to London, etc. So obviously you will go down a lot further, but this is just for the illustrative purposes of building this sheet. Or you may not do many business miles, in which case this is fine. Okay, so I'm just gonna, it's not really necessary, but just because it makes it easier to read, I'm going to put total miles in the bottom there at cell A65, and I'm going to tab across, I'm going to put an equals and just put it up to there. We know that our total miles is basically always what's in this, the last cell with a figure in it that's not 0, and it won't be 0 the minute a figure goes in. They will all say the total miles. And I'm just going to do the same here. I'm going to go to home. I'm going to put a little, this time I want it at the top, so I'm just going to put top border, and then I'm going to highlight that and bold. Okay, so should we just check that that works? So let's say we did on that day we did 100 business miles, and as you can see, our total miles for the year is 100, our year to date is 100. Let's say the next day we did 80 business miles, you can now see that year to date our total business miles is 180. And let's say the day after we did 220 business miles, 400, etc. So you can see that it's working. Right, scroll across to H, I've got it on here. Now go up to the top there, hold your left mouse button down. But let's just see what width I've got it set to on here. It doesn't tell me. 22.86. So hold it down. Oops. Click on it, hold it down. 22.86. It doesn't really matter. I'll do, got it anyway. Right, in H8, let's write mileage claim, because this is going to be what we claim for our mileage. This is going to be the actual amount that we're claiming, not the raw miles. Okay, and let's put that in bold. Now then, what we're going to be putting in here is a sum, and we're going to want to put in our parameters for the sum. And the reason I'm doing it like this is so that if the tax rules change in future, we can hopefully just change the relevant pieces and the formula will still be viable. Of course, if they start introducing different things like more than a 2-tier, like 3 tiers or whatever, obviously this won't work. But I'm trying to build a formula with a little bit of flexibility in it. So the first thing is going to be, there's a lower mileage limit. So just type that in cell H11 and hit enter. Then lower mileage allowance and hit enter. Then upper mileage allowance and hit enter. And then max lower mileage claim, hit enter. Okay, so the lower mileage limit is 10,000 because up to 10,000 miles we're allowed to claim 45 pence. So we need to set the lower mileage limit, which is 10,000. We need to set what our allowance is for the lower mileage limit, and I'm setting this in pounds, so it's 0.45 pounds, or £0 45 pence. Then we've got our upper mileage allowance, so that's anything over and above the 10,000 limit, which we are allowed to get a mileage of 25 pence, so that's 0.25 pounds. And we want to know what is the maximum lower mileage claim and that is basically our 10,000 miles. So put equals, because this is going to be a sum. So equals, then use your mouse buttons to scroll up to our lower mileage limit. And then when you've got that on J11, what you want to do is go over to your numeric keypad or above the 8 key at the top and hit the little asterisk button, because in Excel formula language an asterisk is times. And then we want to times it by our lower mileage limit allowance, which is 45 pence. So that's J12, and hit enter. So that means that if you did the full 10,000 miles at the 45 pence, you would get the maximum lower mileage claim, which is the £4,500. Okay. Right. Now we want to build our formula. Okay. Now because this has 2 tiers in it, we need the formula to produce one figure if it's below the 10,000, but use another formula if it's above the 10,000. So we can do that with an if statement. So hit equals and then type if, and then hit your brackets. Now then, it's given us it's explaining to us the formula. So equals if logical test. Okay, what am I testing? Now I've put the formula that I've calculated there just for ease of reference. So E65 was where I had the total miles. So I want to say that if this total miles is less than 10,000, that it does one calculation, and if it's above 10,000 it does another. So let's do that. First of all, we want to do logical test. We first click on this because this is what we're testing against. E65, and we're going to then just go into the box up here, move your mouse over here and click into this, because this is the formula bar. You can still see it's still showing us the test there, yeah. And now we need the operators. So this sign here means less than. So it's saying if that value in E65 is less than, and then we're going to click in this box here. Yeah, that's the test. If this is less than this, then we hit, you'll note in the next to logical test, it's got a comma. So we hit comma because that's saying, okay, this is the test you want me to carry out. what value do you want me to use if it's true? So this is where we can put another formula. If we hit the comma now, that tells it we've moved on to the next bit, right? If it's true that E65 is less than the upper mileage limit, then the answer is going to be E65, which is the mileage, then hit the little asterisk again, which is times by, and our lower mileage allowance, because basically we're saying our mileage is lower than the maximum that we're allowed to claim at 45p. Therefore, what is my claim at 45 pence? Right, so that's the value we want to return if it's true. So we now move on to what is the value we want to return if it's false. Okay, and if it's false, we're basically saying that the answer is this figure minus this, and we want to put brackets around that because we want it to do that part of the calculate. So we're trying to find out what is the mileage in excess of the 10,000 that we've already claimed. So that'll give us the mileage in excess of the 10,000. And then we're going to times that by the 25 pence we're allowed. And then we're going to add the maximum. And then we're going to close the brackets because we finished the formula. And then we're going to hit enter. Okay, so just to explain again what that formula is doing, it's say, okay, we've got two tier here, and we're going to need to use a different calculation depending if we're over the 10,000 or under the 10,000. So the first thing we need to do is use a formula that will allow us to test whether it's above or below the value that we're looking for. And depending on if it's above or below the value we're looking for, return one value if it's below and another formula if it's above. And if it's within the 10,000, then obviously all we want it to tell us is, well, what miles have we done? And times it by the mileage allowance that we've got. But if it's gone above the 10,000, we need to first know how much it's gone over the 10,000. So this is going to give us the figure that's over the 10,000. So it's going to say, right, okay, the 10,000 minus, so that's the total miles, minus the maximum, which is the 10,000, which will give us a figure. And then it's going to say that miles is at 25 pence. And because we know we've gone over the maximum, we need to add the maximum allowance in to that sum, because at the moment all we've calculated is the bit above the maximum, so the bit at 25p. So when we add that to it, we've got our final figure. Okay, so that's how that formula works, and that is what your formula should look like in that cell. And we can just check that it works. We know this works already anyway, because we've tested that. So let's just clear these and let's do a couple of examples. Let's say we've just done 5,000 miles in the year. Hit enter. So 5,000 miles at 45 pence a mile is half of our maximum. So it's 2,250. You can check that if you want with a calculator, but 5,000 miles at 45 pence is a claim of £2,250. Yep. If we did another 5,000, we would get our 4,500. Now, why this works is because if we look at our formula, what it's actually going to do is it doesn't meet that one, because that says less than 10,000. That isn't less than, that's equal to 10,000. So it's moving across to carry out this calculation. 10,000 minus 10,000 is 0. 0 times anything is 0. And then it's just going to add on top of 0 the maximum 4,500, which is 10,000 at 45p. So it works even at the 10,000. And let's say we did another 2,000 on top of that in the year. So we ended up doing 12,000 in total. It's 5,000, because obviously now we've got 10,000 miles at 45p, which is 4,500, and 2,000 miles at 25 pence, which is 500, because it's a quarter, and a quarter of 2,000 is 500. That plus that is 5,000. So we know our mileage calculation works. Now then, the only thing we want to do is we now want to link that figure straight into our profit and loss sheet, because this isn't a figure that we're going to be typing in. So we can just go on here and look on there and put equals. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do actually, just to make this. I'm going to click on cell 13 and then right click on it and then click insert. Then type in there because maybe you're running a van in your business and you don't want to use the mileage, but you're also using a car and you do want to use the mileage. Okay, or you've got other expenses like parking and stuff that you want to put on top of that. So let's just put in a bracket here. So that we know that that doesn't include the mileage, and then we can put our mileage allowance in there. So once you've done that, go over here, click equals, And now go across to your mileage sheet and just click that J8 and hit enter. Now let's get rid of these staff wages costs, just so as not to confuse ourselves. So anything bar mileage that's to do with travel, if we buy a van, if we get a van repaired, whatever, we can put in there. Right, van petrol, okay, we put in there. Now you can't claim mileage for a van and all the other costs. For any vehicle, you're only allowed to claim mileage allowance or actual costs. And for a car, if you're using the cash basis, if you're not going to use the mileage allowance for the car, then you have to start using capital allowances and stuff like that, which is too complicated to go into in this tutorial. So we can just see that whatever we do here affects that front sheet. Now let's say we do 20,000 miles in a year. That gives us a mileage claim of 7,000. And if we go to our profit and loss now, we'll see we've got 7,000. Okay, so the big caveat on the mileage allowance is if you're claiming a mileage allowance for any vehicle, you cannot claim any other cost. It's one or the other. And once you've claimed one method against that vehicle, you cannot change to a different method. So let's say you buy a van and you decide to claim mileage allowance on it. You then can't claim any other costs associated with owning and running that van. You only can claim mileage allowance for that van. You can then, if you replace the van, that next van, you could change to claiming actual costs. As I say, on cash basis, if it's on a car, then you're going to start having to get involved in capital allowances. If it's not a car on a cash basis, you can just claim the full cost of the van that you purchased it and all the costs. You don't have to worry about capital allowances. So that, guys, is basically a very quick and simple profit and loss. Now I'm just going to hit save there, so we've got it. Now you can of course use this as it is for calculating what you need to do. So you could get out all your receipts and you could use this calculator and you could go through each one and go 100 plus 50 plus 60 plus 70 plus 95, hit enter, and it will add it up for you, and it will keep a track of what you got. That's obviously the simplest way to use it. Professional fees, let's say you asked me to come in and build you a spreadsheet. I'm going to charge you a huge amount of money. There you go, there's my bill. Let's say you add loan interest and you hit the maximum you're allowed. It'd be 500. And you hadn't had any other costs. So then you're basically, for the taxman's purposes, your income would be 10,000. And all your costs you would enter your costs. If as long as your turnover is less than 85,000, you're just able to put in your total cost of 8875, and it would calculate that you've got a profit of 1,125 for your sole trade. So that's basically how you can do it simply. Right. What I'm going to do in the next video is, if you don't want to do it this way, I'm going to show you a quick way of, as long as most of your income and expenses go in your bank, how to extract all that data from your bank account into Excel and then quickly manipulate the information from that bank data and populate this with your individual expenses, and then give you your figures that you can enter into your self-assessment tax return. So I'm going to do that in the next video. If you found that interesting and useful, then the next video will show you how to extract your bank transactions from your bank, bring them into Excel, quickly identify your expenses, what they are, sum them up, populate your template, then you can print your template off and go in and complete your tax return, instead of having to go out and get all your receipts out and type them in one at a time or what have you. Okay, that's that, guys. Any comments, questions? Feel free to put them in the comments below. Cheers now. Bye bye.